Overnight, President Trump dropped another bombshell, a 50% tariff on copper and a possible 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals. Copper tariffs are supposed to come into effect August 1st, hypothetically. Hi everyone, my name is Raluca MacKenzie. Thanks for joining me today on this video about Trump's latest chaos he's igniting in the tariff trade war between Canada and the US. What I personally would love to know is who taught Trump his math? Because he honestly just pulls numbers out of his behind. And he is the President of the United States of America. But honestly, this is turning out to be the worst Price is Right game in the history of North America. All right, so the Pharma tariffs are supposed to come in later if he doesn't change his mind. But the warning is pretty clear. This is aimed directly at countries like Canada. And if we don't pay attention, or if our government doesn't come up with some extremely strategic and clever plan, this is going to be worse than the steel tariffs. And this isn't just some random trade move. It is targeted and it is designed to hit Canada hard. Trump announced the copper tariff late last night, and almost instantly, copper prices exploded. Over 10% jump in futures. That is a hefty market reaction. Meanwhile, pharma companies got a chilling warning, 12 to 18 months to bring their operations back to the US soil, or they will face a 200% import tax. Now let's be real. That kind of pressure will absolutely shatter international supply chains. We are one of the biggest copper suppliers to the US. So this isn't just a US domestic policy. This is going to crush our mining sector, cost us thousands of jobs, and trigger another wave of inflation, especially in the clean energy space where copper is everything. EVs, wind turbines, solar grids, smart homes, battery storage, all of it relies on copper. And guess what? The US cannot meet its own copper demand. So they're trying to bully the rest of us into playing their game while pretending it's about national security. Well, it's not. It's just about leverage. And the pharmaceuticals, Canada exports a huge amount of generics and API components to the States. So if Trump slaps 200% duties on those, as much as it would be devastating for Canadians and jobs, let's not forget, this affects US tremendously as well. They keep saying he wants to bring these industries back to the US. But this is not something that happens overnight. There is a tremendous amount of coordination, planning, infrastructure required to be able to bring these type of industries back into your country. Listen, I understand. You've got to start somewhere. But these drastic measures being applied so carelessly will only corner the US in. Everyone will see shortages, delays, price spikes, and a massive squeeze on an already fragile system. Trump's basically saying, obey our trade rules or suffer. And let's not forget, this comes after the imposed 50% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. He threatened auto parts just last month again. We implemented and dropped our DST, Digital Services Tax, within 48 hours in order to try to avoid a trade war from escalating. But Trump is still doing this. So clearly he isn't interested in diplomacy. He's trying to reset the entire power structure. Right now, Ottawa is in damage control mode. The loonie dropped to an 8-day low after Trump's announcement. The Bank of Canada is already struggling with inflation and consumer debt. If copper slows down, and pharma costs explode, we could see another interest rate hike because they will try to stabilize our dollar. Meanwhile, the US Treasury is loving this. They're saying tariffs like these could bring in $300 billion by year end. That's a huge haul, and Trump's already floating the idea of using it to fund more tax cuts. Will this actually pan out that way though? And then the Canadians. This whole strategy, this tariff barrage is meant to isolate us, weaken our bargaining position, and force us into a one-sided deal. Trump wants full control of North American trade. This seems to be his endgame. It is not about fairness, it's not about dominance. Countries like Japan and South Korea are already sending trade reps to DC. Trump weaponizes tariffs, destabilizes allies, and then demands concessions. If he moves on softwood lumber again, or for example, energy exports, we could be looking at a much larger trade war between us. Because anything over 50% or larger in tariffs is really ultimately a trade ban on that product. So these things are just not feasible. Importers can't eat up that kind of cost, and consumers are just not willing to pay the price. Canada needs to start making some sort of moves because Ottawa has been painfully quiet. Besides diversifying supply chains, we need to start building infrastructure within our own country to be able to be less dependent on others. Canada is such a rich country in natural resources, but we are not very capable at bringing those resources to an end product. We need to lock in fair trade deals with Europe and Asia and start talking seriously about interprovincial trade, because we cannot keep relying on others for everything. Alberta and Ontario have gotten a head start on the interprovincial trade, and it is a topic I'll cover in an upcoming video. But listen, this isn't about politics anymore. It's about protecting Canada's independence. When Trump hits us with a 50% tariff on copper and threatens 200% on pharmaceuticals, this is not just economic pressure anymore. That's economic warfare. And if we're not prepared, it'll be all of our jobs, our supply chains, and our sovereignty on the line. So that's where we're at. Ladies and gentlemen, if you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. I am going to keep covering the story every time it escalates or changes. As much as I wish I was sharing nothing but happy news and things like that, you do need to stay informed and know what is going on. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful day.